Hello, and welcome to another edition of BNEWS In Depth. I'm your host, Rich Hosford. Although a number of vaccines have been approved for COVID-19 for emergency use, it'll take a while to get them to everyone. While we wait, the shutdown continues and social distancing guidelines are in place. Add to that, the post-holiday winter stretch and the situation looks pretty bleak. This month we are focusing on mental health, winter, and a pandemic. We will take it in three parts. Up first will be my conversation with Burlington Youth and Family Services Director Christine Shruhan for an overview of the situation. Then we'll talk to Council on Aging Director Marge McDonald about seniors and mental health. And we'll end with a conversation with Joe Attubato and Christine CONCEISON of the BHS Support Services about students and mental health. We have a lot to get to, so let's get started.
I'm now joined by Zoom with Burlington Youth and Family Services Executive Director Christine Shruhan, who is coming in to talk to us about mental health, winter, and the pandemic. Christine, thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
So I wanted to start with just, sort of what we normally see during the winter time as far as, virus aside, what kind of things kind of creep up as far as, issues people may be having, with mental health?
Sure. I think one of the things that oftentimes happens in the wintertime is there's a disorder known as seasonal affective disorder. And with the decrease in the amount of sun during the day, some people find that they really do struggle with depressive symptoms. So they may have a harder time getting up out of bed and getting themselves, acclimated in the morning. And it can be as simple as that. It could also be something that then leads into, it really does interfere with folks getting into work and with their work or school life. So we see those kinds of things really go on for people in the winter. And I think sometimes isolation is another piece that, again, happens for people during the course of the winter, depending upon, what the weather is like. There is certainly some winters where we spend more time indoors. There's less of an opportunity to be outdoors. So there's those kinds of pieces that happen.
And then on the other side of it, what have you been seeing so far, as far as stresses from, the pandemic that people are already dealing with, winter aside?
Well, I think with the pieces that I've talked about those, but in addition, there's a whole, there's an anxiety component that comes into the mix with COVID, because so much of what is normal or routine has been disrupted. And going into the winter months, we're looking at 3, 4, 5 months where life is going to be very different. And so with the not knowing about how things are going, and with an increase in the number of folks that are getting COVID, I think that adds the whole anxiety element to the picture, which complicates it.
Yeah, it seems like the two things happening at the same time sort of might be able to set people up, especially if they're not able to see their normal families over the holidays and interact with friends, or have that sort of comfort of going out for a nice dinner or something.
Right. Exactly.
And one of the other things that kind of came to mind is usually there's a lot of emphasis on exercise and mental health. And I think, some people usually in the wintertime probably hit the gym more, but may be wary to do so this year. Is there any sort of, impact and then maybe advice that you have for people as far as, still getting out and moving?
I think one of the pieces that you have to do this winter is going to be being creative about how you become active. Because I think for a lot of folks, they are going to be more hesitant to go to the gym. And so figuring out how are you going to get the, not the same workout, because I don't think you're going to get the same workout at home, but what kinds of things can you begin to start to do in your own life that give you the same benefit? So some people like to be outdoors, so making sure that you build in time to go out for a nice walk for yourself, or jog if you're a runner. If you aren't somebody who really likes the outdoors, and figuring out ways to be able to do that indoors. And some people have, equipment to be able to do that. Other people don't. I oftentimes, for folks, will suggest just move around. If turn the music on and just move around, get your heart rate up in whatever way you can. It makes a difference. It really does. It increases the endorphins that help us feel better. So in whatever way you can do that, I can't stress that piece enough.
Yeah, I think that's good advice for people. Now, one of the things, that I think we want to talk about is sort of like, reaching out to other people who, like if you're, an adult and you're feeling okay, what sort of things should you be doing, to try to make sure, your children are good, checking in with them, things to look out for as far as, their mood or temperament goes?
Sure. And in terms of like your kids, you know what your kids were like pre-pandemic. Whatever changes you see, again, paying attention but not becoming too alarmed, watching them over time, because we look for changes over time. So if your kid is a little bit more moody than they might typically be, that's pretty normal in these circumstances. If it continues for a period of time, that's where you just might want to reach out and check with your pediatrician to see, what their thoughts are, because they certainly know your child over a period of time. People can also reach out to us, and we're certainly more than happy to answer some questions over the phone if you have questions about and some concerns that you might have about your child. But things like sleep, sometimes younger kids are having a harder time sleeping at night, worried about certain things. So making sure there's time to listen to them and trying to find ways to get them to talk without dealing with it necessarily head on, but talking with your child about the pandemic and the fact that things are changed, and really validating whatever's going on for them and to some degree normalizing it. Then, like I said, watching over time, and if that doesn't help sort of calm them, then reaching out and getting some a consultation somewhere to really assess whether or not is there another step that needs to be taken. Kids are in school, so checking in with teachers and stuff like that is also helpful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, just sort of keeping up that network of
Yep.
People around your children. Probably good thing to do. And what about some of the older adults in your family? People who might be retired, living alone, perhaps. Are there ways to sort of make sure that they are, keeping their spirits up, even if you can't see them face to face?
I think there's been a lot of seniors that have been learning how to do Zoom calls and FaceTime, and we're trying to reach out in whatever way that you can sort of visually see folks. And sometimes, it's being able to have a meal together via Zoom. Those kinds of things I think people have found really helpful. And I certainly feel like, elders really do like to know that people are thinking about them and watching out for them. I think that piece is really, really important.
And so if someone's feeling down, or someone in their family seems different, are there signs to look out for that are different than, like, this is just, I'm having difficult time with this, and then real depression that can actually turn into something dangerous?
I think the pieces in terms of depression are to look at change over time, so that if somebody's sleep is really disrupted, we all can have nights where we might have a difficult time falling asleep or staying asleep. But if that becomes a pattern over time, you really do want to watch out for that. And that, along with maybe changes in mood. So, if you have teenagers, their moods, change often. But again, it really is looking for a pattern of things. If their mood has changed and they're not sleeping well and they're not staying in contact with their friends, those are the kinds of things to watch out for. And again, these are different times, so that sometimes, kids are on Zoom a lot, so they just want to break from it. That in and of itself isn't a bad thing, or something to be concerned about. But if the isolation happens and it's happening for a period of time, that's where you do want to reach out and see what you might be able to do in terms of getting some help for them. And first and foremost is to talk with your kid about it, because sometimes they just want you to to ask the right question, and being able to say, here's what I noticed, is everything okay? And not pushing it, but doing that piece over a period of time. And if there's still no response, that's where then reaching out.
And is there anything people should be aware of in their own feelings? Because I mean, if you're feeling depressed, maybe you don't really notice that you're making changes. So if somebody's like, maybe living alone and they're working from home, so they're not really seeing people, is there sort of like self-checks that they can do to sort of make sure that their own mental health is not, deteriorating too badly?
Sure. I think having a little checklist about, when's the last time I really talked to somebody? If you haven't spoken to somebody in a while, are you reaching out? Is it hard to reach out? All of those are signs that there may be something else that's going on. The hard piece about that is when you're alone and you don't feel like reaching out, it's sometimes harder to take the initiative to do that. That's where again, people checking in and seeing how somebody's doing over a period of time can be helpful.
Mm-hmm. And are there any suggested coping mechanisms if people are feeling down, or they just feeling like they just can't take the current situation anymore?
Certainly, I think first and foremost, if there is somebody, a friend or family member that you feel like really gets you, to reach out to them, because sometimes just letting somebody know, what, I can't take this anymore. It's been this amount of time since I've really had a conversation with anybody, or, I'm tired of having to work from home. Just being able to talk with that, and for somebody to really validate that piece and understand where you're coming from, that can make all the difference in the world, if you would. And sometimes you get a sense of it's helpful to talk, but you need more. And so reaching out to your healthcare provider is oftentimes a good start. Depending upon, the interface, which is a mental health referral service, is a place for people to call. Anybody living in the town of Burlington can access that, and they can help. They'll do a 20-minute assessment over the phone to get some information about what's going on. And it's a way for you to be able to connect with a provider regardless of your age. So it's for young children all the way up through seniors. For folks that have, teens in their home, Youth and Family Services, we're available. We have resources here to be able to help folks deal with whatever's going on for them.
And now, the other thing, if we talk about coping mechanisms, I think that maybe there are also some things that people should be, looking out in their own personal behavior as far as, bad coping mechanisms. I think it's maybe easy if someone's working from home to start drinking a little bit too early in the day, or maybe people are overeating, not eating healthy. How do you sort of self-monitor as far as, how you're making do in this situation?
I think most of us know when we're doing those kinds of things. The question becomes whether or not you really want to acknowledge that, and then again, check-ins with yourself about this has been going on for how long, and seeing whether or not you can change that behavior. So maybe you say, okay, so I'm not going to start drinking until this time, and if you can't implement that change, then that may be a sign that you might need some help outside of that, and reaching out for some support around that. It's really hard if you're not having to get up and get dressed in the morning to go to work. That kind of structure really helps a rhythm, if you would. And so having to develop your own new rhythm is not necessarily an easy thing for folks to do. But there are ways to be able to work at that. If you can, get a buddy. Find somebody who is struggling with the same piece that you're struggling with, and have an accountability buddy. People have found those pieces really helpful.
Yeah, definitely that support system that is out there. Since this is we've been sort of coming into the winter months with daylight saving and all. Have you been hearing more from people in the community? Have more people been reaching out to you?
We've had more people that have been reaching out to us. A lot with kids who are having some anxiety around either sleep or going to school, those kinds of pieces that are happening. So, and kids that are struggling with depression, adults that are struggling with depression as well.
All right. And so it was mostly depression that you're hearing about, anxiety and depression?
Can you say that again?
I said, so a lot of the concerns are around anxiety and depression is what you've been getting,
Anxiety, depression, and then sometimes it starts off with the anxiety and depression. You find out that there's substance use stuff that's going on. But yeah.
All right. So, as we kind of get towards the end, we're going to air this starting in January. So, like you said, we're looking at a few months of dark and cold weather. We talked about some of these things, but just sort of to encapsulate, your general advice for people.
General advice is start planning now for how you're going, what's the best way for you to cope with the next few months. Sit down, if you're, a family, sit down with your kids and come up with some ideas on what are the things that you might want to try over the course of the winter? What are some fun things that you all can do together? If you're spending a lot of time together, how do you get your separate space? I'm trying to think of what other kinds of pieces.
Yeah, hobbies are good.
What's that?
I said hobbies are good.
Hobbies are good, and you know what? If you don't have a hobby, this is the time to just try one on or try a few on for size and see what might work. Because think back to last March, because a lot of people started doing things that they've never done before because they had time to do it. Think about that, and is it those things that you want to continue doing through this winter, or do you want to try some new things? And the internet is a great place for ideas. Your kids are also great idea folk, if you would. They can come up with some really great things for you guys to do. So in whatever way you can, be creative.
Right.
If you need help with creativity, we're here.
Perfect. Yeah, from the grocery store aisles, everyone became a baker last March.
Yes.
Flour was in very short supply.
Yes. It'll be interesting to see if it's that or something new this year.
Yes. Well, thank you very much. I think this was all very important things to go over, and I hope that, we all appreciate the work that you do over there, and the best of luck, and let's get through this pandemic together. Vaccine is on the horizon, and
exactly.
Things will get back to normal eventually.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We go now to my conversation with Council on Aging Director Marge McDonald about seniors, depression, isolation, and what they can do to stay healthy and happy. Let's check it out. I'm now joined by Council on Aging Director Marge McDonald, who's here to talk about the pandemic, winter, and seniors. Marge, thanks for joining me.
Absolutely, glad to be here.
And just kind of going back a little bit, since this all began, how what have you been hearing from the seniors in town about sort of how they're dealing with the situation?
So it's funny because seniors were actually many of them were quite isolated to begin with. Social isolation has always been a kind of burning issue for us. That's the reason senior centers exist. So for some, it's nothing new, and some are quite happy with it, and they're happy to curl up with their books every day. For others, it's been really, really tough. They're social, they want to be out doing things. And we're seeing a huge rise in depression amongst the seniors who are social butterflies and want to be out doing things.
Yeah, I mean, I know from, calling bingo that it's, there are a lot of people that come to the senior center here in Burlington. So is this time of year normally more difficult for the seniors?
Yeah, I mean, it's a tough time of year for anyone who's had any kind of loss, right? You don't have your family members aren't there, there's empty chairs at the table. And that's whether, there's a pandemic or not. I mean, the longer you live, the more losses you have. Seniors have obviously lost their parents. Many have lost their spouses, and some have even lost their children. So, and siblings or whatever, all of those losses they become more apparent and much more difficult to deal with for folks at Christmas or Hanukkah or just during the holidays, Thanksgiving. That's when you really notice people aren't there anymore. And we see a huge increase in people having issues this time of year.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And have you been talking to them just about, the fact that, they are part of the, more vulnerable population to the coronavirus? Is that making an impact as well?
Oh, absolutely. They're not going out nearly as much as they might be otherwise. And then knowing that they're at risk and living in that fear all the time is very difficult for many of them. I'm sure it's taking a huge physical as well as emotional toll to just always be afraid of, what's around the corner, so to speak.
And what are some of the things that people who are watching, should do as far as like maybe, for older family members? I know people are afraid of, spreading, accidentally, the virus to them. But, what are other ways that they can kind of reach out and stay in touch, and how important is it that they do so?
Well, I think, porch visits, if you can still do them. I know it's cold outside, but, even if you sit in your car and you talk to them on the phone and they're looking out the window, just, anything. But, offer to do their grocery shopping, especially as we get deeper into this pandemic. And I have to admit, it's getting a little scary out there right now. I'm hearing of several people that I know that have it right now. Do the grocery shopping, do errands for them. Make sure you're checking in with them every couple of days. If you have an older person in your neighborhood that even if you've never met them, go knock on their door and say, "Can I help you with anything? Can I get you anything?" And just even chatting through an open window, anything that will just brighten their day a little bit and just help them not have to go out if they don't need to.
Yeah, that's going to be my next question is, what neighbors can do, because, especially, as we're in the winter, the day we're taping this, we're expecting a big snowstorm tomorrow. So, I imagine going and helping senior neighbors with things like snow clearing and, getting their car unstuck from their driveway, makes a big difference.
All of that's helpful. But, just something as simple as, I'm going to the store, do you want anything? Or taking them over some cookies. Just anything to show you're thinking of them is helpful. And any small gesture you can do for them is also incredibly helpful.
And what are some of the things that you guys are doing over at the Senior Center? I know you have virtual programming. What have you been able to maintain? What's changed? What do you have as far as, things for people to do?
So not a lot has been lost during this in terms of programming. We're not doing the current events anymore. The person that ran that is not online. But we have exercise classes. We have all of our exercise classes except line dancing going on. And then we've been having musical things. We just today had an actress portraying a character with Christmas, for Christmas. We're doing a caroling party next week. We're doing grab and goes, which are new to us, but every single town and city is doing them, I guess, where we get items, whether it be a lunch, many towns do lunch, or just some fun thing. We've been doing ice cream sundae cups from, the Friendly's ones. And we just sit outside and people come through and we talk to them for a minute and they get their ice cream sundae and off they go. It's a good way for us to check on them, and it's a good way to give them something to do, something to do, something to look forward to. We've had all sorts of feedback. People tell us it's the highlight of their week, highlight of their month, that they, what we're giving them is nice, but it's really us that's the highlight of what we're doing. It's a way to be somewhat social without putting people at an enormous amount of risk.
And you mentioned that you have exercise programs online. Talk about just the importance of, of exercise on not just physical health, but on mental health.
Exercise is everything, I think. If you're not moving around, just for the physical part of it, you're for all of us who have not been moving around as much as we do, we've all noticed how much we've deteriorated physically. And that's really not good for seniors because they can fall, they can get hurt, and then they can, never really kind of be the same. They can be completely disabled, going forward, if not worse. But mentally, being physical gets those endorphins going, those feel-good endorphins, those the hormones everyone talks about, and that's really important. I mean, you feel better about yourself. You get moving. You get the adrenaline going. You get the blood pumping, and you just feel better. The more physically fit you are, the better you feel. And with the exercise classes, I mean, walking's great and everything. The exercise classes, you're being social. You're with people, even if you're not in the same room with them. They're there. You could look at other faces, and faces of people and you've got people are talking. You can have that conversation, and that is just huge. Social engagement is so huge for mental health and physical health, but you can't understate the importance of it.
And are there other, resources available for people if they're feeling really depressed or feeling very lonely? Other places they can reach out to, just to make sure that they're not deteriorating, like you said?
Yeah. So if you're feeling mentally depressed, be it because of the holidays and you've lost somebody you love, and don't forget that none of us have been able to grieve for the last 10 months, and Burlington has lost a lot of people. That you can become very depressed. There's the town is contracted with a group called Interface that gives referrals for therapists and counselors. And if you have your newsletter and you look at the back page of the newsletter, there's actually on the bottom of the back page, the information is sitting there. If you've lost your newsletter or you're watching this and you're not over 60 and you don't get the newsletter, you can call the schools, you can call Burlington Youth and Family, or you can call the Council on Aging, any one of us, and we'll give you the information to call. But help is definitely available for folks.
And can you explain a little bit more about that program and what they provide?
So it's a referral service that will find somebody in your area, which can be very difficult to do, that also takes your insurance, which is nearly impossible to find, and who is taking new clients.
Yeah, I've heard that that's an issue, especially during this time, that a lot of places were not taking on new people because they didn't want to have new people coming in, or trying to work through that through the telephone.
Yeah, they'll find someone who is for you. There's also if you're feeling really like you want to harm yourself, there's the Samaritans that you can contact them. I don't happen to have a phone number, but off the top of my head, but they're definitely a resource if it gets really bad.
And I know that, this time of year, obviously, if it snows, it gets to be more difficult to drive. Maybe people need to, go to doctor's visits or things like that. Talk about, availability of, rides and such through the senior center through the town.
Absolutely. So we have, the van is operating. We have had one retirement, and so we're not replacing her for the moment because we really don't need more than one van driver. But we do have the van service. We have a nice brand new minivan. So we can take folks in wheelchairs. We can take people who can walk into the van themselves. A little minivan, a little Dodge Caravan. We also have the new program, the Burlington Transportation Program, that is through Lyft. So you would either upload the application, the Lyft application, onto your phone, and you have to apply for it, obviously, but you upload that onto your phone and put in your information, and then you can call for a ride. Or you can go through GoGo Grandparent, which is a concierge service, originally intended for someone's grandmother, but it branched out to folks who are disabled or anyone who doesn't have a cell phone or isn't comfortable, and they will track the ride, so you can feel a bit safer. It is more expensive, a little bit, but it's a good opportunity, good option. But you do need to apply for it through us. Be over 60, disabled, or income eligible. So it's a pretty simple application process. It's you pay the first $1, we pay the next $10, and then anything over $11 is your responsibility. 24/7, you can use the service. You can go anywhere for anything. just the rides have to start and stop in Burlington.
Right.
I could say stop or start. They
Right.
don't have to go anywhere, but you have to end or begin.
Right, one of the places in Burlington. So, I mean, I think as we're wrapping up, it seems like, it's a difficult time for everybody. Nobody, well, some people like the winter, but I don't understand them. But there are resources out there. There are things that people can do to help their, older relatives and neighbors, and there's it's not all dark. There's stuff out there.
There's definitely stuff out there, and New England is a resilient bunch, whether they're 90 or they're 10. I mean, it's New England. We do what we do, and I think New Englanders are probably, and anyone who lives in the North is probably in a better position to be isolated during quarantines and such than someone who lives in the South and is used to being out and about. We have the winters. We've practiced for isolation all of our lives.
That's true. All right. Well, I very much appreciate you taking some time and talking to us about this important subject. And, I hope you have a nice and easy winter.
Thank you. You too.
Thank you.
Mask up, everyone.
Yes, definitely.
We go now to my conversation with BHS Support Services Director Joe Attubato and school social workers Christine CONCEISON about students and mental health. Let's take a look.
All right, I'm now joined by, what is your title exactly?
My title is Support Services Coordinator at Burlington High School.
All right, Support Services Coordinator at Burlington High School, Joe Attubato, and Christine CONCEISON, who is a guidance director?
School social worker.
School social worker. So we're doing this a little bit differently today. We have one person in person and one person over Zoom, as everybody's operating these days. So thank you both for joining me today.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
So I wanted to start, this is going to air in January. The holidays will be over. We're going to be in the, kind of looking at, the rest of the winter. We're still obviously in the midst of a pandemic. So just sort of talk about some of the stresses that are on students, in this strange year that we find ourselves in.
Sure. I think the stressors certainly started in the spring when all this began. And it was new. It was a huge learning curve in terms of counseling. We are so used to the concept of live face-to-face counseling. That's how we predominantly operate. And just as teachers were adjusting to the fully remote situation, counselors were as well. So there was quite a learning curve, but I think the counseling staff at the high school adjusted the best we could. We were still able to offer counseling opportunities for our students, although it was virtual. We still had that chance to do that. And leading into the summer and into this school year, the stressors, I think, somewhat continued. Things died down from a school perspective, counseling perspective in the summer a little bit, and things picked up again in the fall. And the high school, we're staffed by, we have 5 counselors, a school adjustment counselor, and also Chrissy CONCEISON, who's here today, is our school social worker who works predominantly in a social emotional program we have at the high school. Counselors, again, continue to work with students. Stress levels vary amongst student population, certainly. Seniors, especially in the fall, not only are we in the midst of a pandemic, we are also looking to pick colleges. And so
Right.
I think that right off the bat was a challenge. And I think the counselors, again, the entire counseling staff offers Google Classroom, just as teachers do. So we tried to alleviate stress by making ourselves as available as possible. And we also tried to keep things somewhat normal, I guess. I don't know if that's the best word, but we still offered our college planning night for seniors. We're still offering our breakfast series for parents. And again, we're still connecting with seniors to really hone in and solidify planning after high school. I think the test situation for students caused some stress. And when I say test situation, I'm referring to the SATs.
Mm-hmm.
Most colleges, if seniors that are listening, and even juniors, most colleges have already publicized whether or not they're going to accept SATs or count them in the admission process. And most colleges aren't doing that. I think that helped alleviate a lot of stress among seniors. And then in addition to that, Burlington High School was able to offer something called SAT School Day. So for those seniors that didn't have the opportunity to take the SATs last spring, they were able to take the SATs here in the school. Again, not a big proponent of standardized testing, but it was creating stress that they never had the opportunity to take it. So we did give seniors the opportunity to do that. And we're going to do something similar for juniors down the road. And then the normal beginning of the school year and years past, students adjusting to classes. We have students requesting course changes. This year, that somewhat died down. We didn't have as many students requesting to change courses, and I think it's partly just because of this new situation. Students are only in a couple times a week. So I think that that was an interesting thing that kind of transpired as a result of this. I think students wanted to just get in the building, in the class, and get comfortable. And I think the beginning of the year, we heard a lot about stress with homework, the amount of work students are getting from teachers, those types of things. And the school really has done a great job at hearing some of the concerns and making adjustments on the fly. And I think that has certainly kind of helped situations. We came up with a homework policy. We're talking about midterm exams now, and it should be publicized by the time this is, by the time people are viewing this. But
Right.
midterm exams, we're going to modify that process somewhat significantly, meaning probably not going to have exams, probably going to be more project-based. So again, I think that is another way the high school's kind of heard some of the stresses out there and address them.
Well, it seems like there's a lot of focus on sort of adjusting to the situation as everything has changed.
Absolutely, everything has changed, and when it's all said and done, I think we'll definitely have learned some lessons from this. And I think Mrs. CONCEISON works with students quite a bit, day to day, boots on the ground, where she is interacting with students that are in the midst of stress as well. And she could probably talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I want to bring her in now. So, Christine.
So to your point, I mean, I think we generally see pre-COVID an uptick in students experiencing stress and anxiety and other mental health concerns as winter approaches and the holidays approach. And we're definitely seeing that this year as well. I do think that we have some great resources available to students within the school, and also we have wonderful partnerships outside of the school. So as Mr. Attubato stated, we have a very dedicated counseling staff. We are also very fortunate to have both a school adjustment counselor and myself, a school social worker, as well as 2 school psychologists. So between all of those people, we are definitely trying to support students each in their own way, whether that's through individual check-ins or participation through the Bridge program, which is our social emotional program at the high school. We also this year, the high school did an early adapter program through the DESA, which screens for social emotional capabilities of students, and what every student at the high school had the opportunity to take it. And we got some great data back, and using that data, we're actually pushing out social emotional lessons for teachers to implement in the classroom. So students might start to notice teachers doing some brief meditations, some body scans, some mindfulness practices in their classrooms, either at the beginning or the middle or the end. So I think as a staff, we're really dedicated to trying to practice some good coping strategies with students this year. I think too, as a school, there's a group within the school who's working with Burlington Public Libraries and Burlington Youth and Family Services to do a community book group. So that book group is a 5-series book group all around mental health. Anyone in the community can pick up a book at the library and read it and participate in the book group. And the hope was to kind of open up the conversation community-wide about mental health, to introduce other community members and parents to some of the staff members at the high school who are dedicated to social emotional learning and to mental health of all Burlington students. So we have some really interesting things going on. We have some wonderful partnerships with Leahy Behavioral Health and Arbor, as well as Burlington Youth and Family Services, to provide families and students with direct counseling support, outside counseling if they request it. And the Burlington Public Schools also partnered with William James College this past year to offer Interface, which is actually a service that's open to any Burlington resident. So it's not just for students, it's for any resident in town. And what Interface is a referral helpline. So you can call this number and give them your information and kind of what you're looking for in regards to therapeutic services. If you're looking for, a male or a female, if you're looking for someone who specializes in a certain area, whether it's depression or anxiety or any other issue, and your health insurance, and what they will do is vet the process for you. So they will call around and find someone who has an opening within 2 weeks for you, which is really a wonderful service. And it's something new to town this year. And I think the feedback so far has been really positive.
And if someone is interested in accessing that support, where can they find it?
So the Burlington Public Schools has its own Interface website that they can look at. Every resident in the town received a letter this fall from Dr. Conti, myself, and Mr. Sagarino, kind of outlining Interface and the services that it offered. And if they just Google Interface William James, they can go right there, and there's a Burlington specific page with information and with a number and our letter to them kind of outlining what the steps are. So it's definitely a wonderful service. I can't recommend it enough. And I think it takes some of the stress of just finding a provider right off of you and puts it on an agency that's really what their goal is.
Excellent. And as you're working with students this year, what are some of the sort of things that they're bringing to you as far as what they're dealing with, and maybe what is sort of stressful to them in these circumstances?
I mean, I'm hearing a lot about feeling isolated. That's definitely one of the major topics this year. I think everyone is feeling kind of confined, and I know people are stressed as the winter comes, and they're more likely to be stuck inside and not going outside. I think, as Mr. Attubato spoke earlier, students are stressed. Some are struggling with the hybrid learning model and getting themselves organized and motivated to participate, especially on virtual days. So we've been dealing with a lot of students, talking to them about kind of the concept that action precedes emotion, meaning that sometimes when we're stressed or anxious, isolated, depressed, a lot of us will sit and kind of wait for that emotion to pass. And the truth is that we actually need to do something in order to change our emotional state. So we've been working a lot with students on setting very small goals, small achievable goals to get them moving, to get them out doing a coping skill, to have them complete a small portion of an assignment to feel a sense of accomplishment. So those are definitely the main themes that I've been seeing this year. And that's, on top of what Mr. Attubato was talking about earlier, the stress the seniors are feeling for getting college applications done. It's been an interesting year for sure at the high school.
Yeah.
And I think we're trying to hear as best we can student perspective right now, dealing with the pandemic. And it's been a challenge to some extent. We try to stay ahead of it when we can. I think one of the things that we did this year was, knowing freshmen are new to the building and coming into the building for the first time in this new hybrid situation, we actually started the year when the counseling department introduced ourselves, and Mrs. CONCEISON helped with this as well. We actually went through a meditation process with the freshmen. Some found it helpful, some not so much, but I think the idea was, we're getting ready to start a school year, especially for freshmen in a new school, new situation, pandemic. Let's get ourselves relaxed and give them a tool that they can hopefully go back to later in the year if they're feeling that stress.
Yeah, and it seems to me that, if you offer something like a meditation session, even if it doesn't benefit one student in that moment, it sort of at least demonstrates that taking care of yourself and having that sort of time to, focus on your own mental health is allowable. It seems like it's a good exercise, even if in the moment it doesn't necessarily, have a benefit for a student or not.
Yeah, and I think that's a great point. And just mental health in general, I think tends to get a bad rap to some extent. In the past couple of years, we've been trying to get it out to the student population that lots of people deal with mental health issues. There's no need to be ashamed about it. And being able to identify it and deal with it, I think, is extremely important. So I think pre-pandemic, giving students tools was something we were trying to incorporate in the day-to-day lives of students. But now, I think even more so, getting that information and those skills to our students are, again, more important than ever.
Yeah.
And to your point about the tools, I think one of the things that we try to focus on is that not everyone loves mindfulness. Not everyone loves deep breathing. Some students appreciate more of an activity-based coping strategy. So, trying to find something that fits for you is really important. And I think we've been trying to introduce different methods for students because we realize that, not everyone feels the same way about different strategies. But I think there has been, pre-pandemic and currently a lot of strategies kind of shared with students as ways to try to feel better and to take care of themselves and to take the time to really practice self-care. We've also been talking a lot about everyone has mental health. We talk a lot about like keeping yourself physically healthy. Well, we all have mental health as well. So keeping yourself mentally healthy is just as important. So we've been trying to kind of send that message out as well.
Yeah, and I think it's an important message that not everybody always gets. So a question that I want to ask to both of you, because I think it's probably one of the, the big topics of this show would be, what would be your message? Obviously the students are dealing with a lot, but so are their parents and their families. Maybe they don't understand exactly what it's like to go through high school during a pandemic, because none of us did. What would be, something you'd want to tell parents about, just how to check in with their student, or their child, or, what kind of patience they should have, sort of help them understand what their child is going through.
I mean, I think everyone probably is in a different situation depending on the age of the student, whether or not there's others, how many children are at home. So a lot goes into it. And I don't want to sound cliche, but really just the support parents can provide students, I think is hugely important. Understanding that this is not ideal for a student and frustration levels are higher as it is. And although we are in a pandemic, I think there's a little bit of information overload. So, and I'm referring predominantly to high school, but I think there is an information overload going on to some extent, meaning teachers are sending information, I'm sure administration sending information to students. So it's a little bit of information overload, and parents might feel that too. So taking a step back from that, just being there to support your child and work with them as they navigate through a completely new process. And students that are listening, support your parents, because I think parents are also struggling as well. And I think again, high school specifically, and middle school, but student supporting parents I think is important as well. And still find that time for family time. So for example, school committee meeting last night, Dr. Conti had said he wanted tomorrow, if it snows, to be a snow day. I think that's great. I think that students, families need that. They can get away from the pandemic, from the online schooling, from the communication overload, and just relax and enjoy the snow. So I think that parents certainly need to support their children. Children can actually support parents. And again, just recognizing we are in a completely new frontier with everything that's going on. And I'm saying that personally as a parent of 3 daughters. Things at home can be very challenging. And I know Mrs. CONCEISON has children at home as well. So again, parents are in a difficult situation. So being able to support, having support from their children, and continuing to find time, family time, and friend time as well to have an outlet, because as you heard, some of the high school kids are dealing with isolation issues and those types of things, and to avoid that, I think staying connected as much as we can during this unusual time is more important than ever.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, Joe really got it all. I would just say to parents, you know your child the best. You know when you feel like something is off. Keep the lines of communication open. Try to talk about emotions in your household, how you're feeling, how your student may be feeling. Don't be afraid to reach out for help and to express if you have a concern. It takes a village, and that couldn't be more true right now than during this pandemic. And I've also been trying to really talk with students and parents that we're all in the same storm, but we're not in the same boat, meaning that all of us are dealing with different situations. Some of us have really young children at home, and that's very hard. Some people are dealing with sick relatives or elderly parents living in the home. Some have lost their jobs. So I think we're all experiencing this pandemic very differently. So to have patience for everyone, and to just, try to maintain an open line of communication, and to just, if you're concerned, reach out for help. Ask for someone else to touch base with your child. Across the district, we have a wonderful support staff in every single school. So we're here to help in any way we can. So I just keep reaching out.
I did also just want to mention, I know we're primarily talking about the pandemic, but last spring and even into the fall, we have to remember all the other things that have been happening: the murder of George Floyd, the presidential election, the polarization politically. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot going on, and so again, support at home is huge, and we want to provide as much support from the school perspective as well. But recognizing that there was a lot of things happening at this time in history, and hopefully we can all look back on it and we'll all be much stronger for it. And although this generation or these students are going through a challenging struggle, the hope is we build some resiliency. And I'm hoping that, not just for the Burlington High School students, I'm hoping that for my own children as well, building up that sense of resiliency, getting through this, and knowing that you've endured a very challenging time and been able to come out successful, however you determine success, but come out on the other end, a better person for it.
Yeah, I do think we should all get a trophy saying we, made it through 2020.
Right.
When this is over.
Yeah.
And so we're just about coming up to our time. I wanted to end, a little hopeful, just, as we're looking forward, obviously we know a vaccine is being rolled out. We know, the winter will end. We know, things are moving forward. Just what is your message to students, just to, say, yes, this is a difficult time, but, we are here for you, and we are working, through, this portion of the year?
I mean, I think one thing right off the bat to students is just take a look at your teachers. They're really doing everything they can to support you, again, not just academically, but your mental health. So I think teachers are really trying to support you, and I think once we get through this, you'll see that the teachers here at the high school, the administration, the support staff, we're all very confident that you will get through these times, and again, we'll come out better on the other side. And there's certainly light at the end of the tunnel. You're still here, in the high school students are still receiving an education. We know you're going to go on to do great things after you graduate. And so I think we all still feel that way at the high school. And I know that, again, we will get through this. We're getting through it. And I do think that there is definitely, something good on the horizon.
Excellent. Glad to hear. Anything to add, Christine?
I think you said it great. This too will come to an end. I can't tell you how proud I am of the students that I see on a daily basis, kind of dealing with the social distancing and the wearing a mask. I mean, I couldn't be more proud of our Burlington students and how they've handled transitioning back into school, and how they've handled learning in two different modes, whether they're in person or remote. I think they truly have already shown an extreme amount of resilience. And I think, it's amazing how adaptable they have been. And once again, I can't say enough that if you're having a hard day, to reach out and talk to someone. I think a lot of times we try to deal with things ourselves, and every single one of us in the world needs someone to talk to and to work through things. So find that person, find that adult that you feel like you can go to and you can talk to, whether it's your parents or your coaches or your teacher, a counseling staff member, whomever it may be, and get those emotions out of your head. And I think that is really something that can be truly helpful. And we can only hope that 2021 is going to be the light at the end of the tunnel that we're looking for.
Well, you said it here, so let's hope. Well, I want to thank both of you for taking some time to coming in and talking, and also thank you for your work with Burlington students. I know, it's important and means a lot to the entire community that you guys are there for for all the students. So appreciate, your work and your time.
And we thank you as well for giving us this outlet to get word out.
Well,
Thank you very much.
thank you.
So there you have it, a look at mental health during winter and a pandemic. I'd like to thank my guests, Christine Shruhan, Marge McDonald, Joe Attubato, and Christine CONCEISON. I'd also like to thank all of you for watching. We'll be back with another edition of BNews In Depth next month, so stay tuned.